Good morning, everybody watching live on both YouTube and Twitch TV. This is Vince Russo. I am here with the great Billy Bate.
Hi, Vince.
The Dirty Sheets. Billy, what's going on, bro? Bill, I want to ask you a question if you don't mind me getting a little personal for a second. Okay. Billy's not your real first name, right?
Billy is my middle name.
Yeah, I want to talk about your real first name if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because what can you pronounce it for me?
Nabil
Bate. Okay, now break down Nabil for me. Give me the meaning of that name, where that name came from. Does that name mean anything? I just want to learn a little bit about you, bro.
I don't know too much about it. My dad's an African Arab, so he's an Arab Muslim from Africa, and it's an African Muslim name. A lot of Moroccans are called Nabil. It's a Moroccan name, and or mainly an Arabic religious name. And then my mum is half white, half Indian. So that's the mix. And actually, those two are not supposed to get together. Her dad stood in front of it a long time. And so she had to make the decision as to whether she married my dad or didn't speak to her own dad. And she chose not to speak to her own dad.
Wow.
And then this is a cool story. So she didn't speak to him for 25 years or so. And she works for British Airways. And she knew her dad was on the flight. And then she walked up to him and said, "Hey, Dad, I upgraded you to first class." And after not seeing him for 25 years, she upgraded. But he still didn't speak to her afterwards. He died the next year.
Oh man, what a sad story, bro, huh?
Yeah, that's how weird this whole religion stuff can get between Muslims and Indians. But that's just how it ended up happening.
Now, do you know the meaning behind the name, bro? Do you know what the name represents?
No, we weren't really brought up in that way. Whereas we have the name, and I think my dad and his side of the family would have wanted us to be more Muslim orientated, but we're not really like that. So I've not looked into the meanings and whatnot, and I very, very barely am able to pick up on the language when they're talking. So no, it's very much a sort of westernized upbringing where I can't tell you that much about it.
So Billy, you were born where then? Where were you born?
London. I was born in London.
Born in London. Okay, wow.
I've always lived in London, yeah.
Holy man, if you did your family tree and your roots, man, you would probably find out some really interesting stuff about yourself, bro.
Yeah, I don't know how far they would be able to trace it because people are coming from all kinds of places. Like my dad they were Muslims in Kenya, and my granddad was an Arab in Bahrain. My granddad on my dad's side is an Indian Canadian. And then we have a white English woman just regularly from Shepherd's Bush in London, which is my grandma.
Now, Billy, have you ever wanted to do that? My God, bro, there is probably such a rich history that I bet would freaking blow your socks off, bro.
Only recently, because when I got married, obviously the person you're married to wants to know more about it. And then when you've got a son who is a mix of me and an English girl, white English Caucasian girl. So he has all my mix plus the two of us. So he is going to be all of that plus what she is, plus regular English. So you want to find out at that point. I don't think I had any curiosity about it before, but I think just growing up, you know that you're different. I think with all these issues that are going on at the moment with All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter and all that, you always think about where you fit into it. But I think for me, you only feel like it's weird because you only feel like you're different once you actually encounter any kind of different behavior or any kind of racism or whatever. And I had only a tiny bit because I mainly associated with a lot of the English kids through sports because I was good at sports at school and I played with them in the sports teams and I did extracurricular activities. But only when I got into Big Brother and then came out did I encounter a ton of racism on my social media. So that was the real eye-opener because when I came out of there, because of everything you're kind of given on a plate in terms of this fame and money and women and whatnot, the racism was out of this world. Unbelievable amounts of racism. But I pretty much survived it for the first 22 years.
Wow, that's unbelievable, Billy. Well, bro, here we are, and for those that don't know Billy, he has a website that's called the Dirty Sheets. Now, Billy has the new bro. I swear to God, last night I was up again. I wound up going in a YouTube rabbit hole, and there I tuned into something, but I mean, bro, first, front and center were Meltzer stories saying this was supposed to happen, that was supposed to happen. None of it happened. So then, of course, he had to come up with the excuses why none of it. I don't think people like Dave Meltzer and all these dirt sheet, whatever you want to call them, bro, I don't think they understand. If they just said, I was wrong, I was given the wrong information, I got the wrong information, I don't think they understand, bro. If they said that, that's how they would get respect. But refusing to ever say that and always making excuses for getting the wrong information and putting the wrong information out there. Billy, why do you think that's so difficult for them? I've never heard any one of them say, I was wrong. Why do you think that's so difficult for them?
I think because of the amount of times they would have to do it. And I think because when you're constantly doing it, we've become synonymous with the tagline, plans changed. And that's always tied to Dave Meltzer. Or he's kind of lately gone about things in this roundabout kind of way where he talks about what he thinks might happen as now he's starting to give it as an opinion. Like he's been very, very loose this week with saying that the plans are for Lashley to beat Drew on Sunday, which as far as I understand, and that is not the plan, because the plans moving forward were that they're stuck for an opponent for Drew at SummerSlam, and afterwards they're pretty sure that he'll go through the winter with Orton. And the problem that they're trying to overcome is that Drew always will end up facing guys that have lost feuds, because Edge and Orton is supposed to go 3, which kind of tells you Orton should win at the weekend. But yeah, I don't know anything about that plan at all, where Lashley's winning the belt on Sunday. But he'll get out of it in some way, where he'll talk about how it was considered and how they went back and forth, and there really isn't as much back and forth as you think, because believe it or not, and it probably translates on TV, the TV product is secondary now to their business stuff. They're very much engaged in their business deals and hitting their business targets and sewing up this sponsor and this endorsement and things of that nature. The TV is kept very much on path. Yes, there can be sporadic title changes here and there, but when you're talking about big picture changes where somebody turns around and says they're going back and forth with the direction of the belt, I don't think that that's happening. But he's done it over and over again. When we look as far back as, I think it was when he said that CM Punk was categorically coming back in Chicago before WrestleMania 30, was when I decided to take the leap of faith and start giving out news on Steel Cage and then by myself, because I figured, how can I do any worse? Because I get enough information where I know on behind closed doors, without putting it out on my podcast, I knew that I was getting more right than him. I knew that Punk wasn't coming in on that show from the guys that I spoke to. So I figured, why not go into the public domain and start giving out this information? Because this guy is not just wrong, he's massively wrong on a massive scale about really big things. He's embarrassing himself regularly. So why not? Why not bother?
Okay, now, Billy, you were telling me before we came on the air, you talk about business. You had some business news pertaining to the WWE that was very, very interesting to me. Listen, man, I got to be honest with you. Like, the shit they're doing on TV, like, is not interesting. It doesn't even warrant talking about. It's not even borderline ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I mean, we're Nickelodeon sliming people now, bro. It's horse shit. The only thing that is really interesting in talking about is what's really going on. Give me the business. what's happening behind the scenes. That's what I like to talk about. You got something very interesting with streaming services and the WWE. What's going on, man?
Yeah. So first of all, there's more news around business as well. So if business stuff is your cup of tea, then go over to the brand channel after this, because we're going to carry on talking about more business stuff in terms of them coming back to arenas, etc. Because I have some information on that, but I also have some information on the fact that they will be moving the network over to streaming service. So whereas a lot of people over the last week have noticed that there's been changes to the network where a lot of the content is free, to give people a sample size, a sample of a taste of what is on the network. Now, this is simply to get as many eyes on the network as possible so that you like the additional content that's on there, because sooner or later, additional content is all you're going to have, because these major pay-per-views, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, WrestleMania, and possibly the Saudi shows, they will be moving to a UFC type of streaming service. And what that means is that at the moment, the UFC stream all of their pay-per-views with ESPN, and they get $17 million no matter what. This weekend at 250, they went with a very weak, one-sided women's main event, and UFC 249 was absolutely loaded to the realm, overloaded. In fact, that was their comeback show. So it doesn't matter to them. The ESPN trust that they'll have some good cards where they do around about 100,000 to 200,000 buys. And then they do some cards that did 700,000 like UFC 249. Or if Conor's fighting, Conor McGregor will do over 1 million. Or if John Jones is fighting, he can do anywhere between 750 and 1 million. So it's going to vary a lot between who you put on these cards. But ESPN trust that UFC will even this out over a period of time. So they're getting their 17 million guaranteed. WWE are not going to be anywhere near that. But I think around about the $5 to $7 million mark for each pay-per-view, be it a Survivor Series, which will be the weakest one, or a WrestleMania, they're still going to now generate this extra income from the streaming services. Now, the problem that UFC are having is the egos, because we've seen Conor McGregor fake retire at the weekend. This is a negotiating tactic. We've seen John Jones and Masvidal bashing the UFC, and they're negotiating and how much they're paid for fights. I don't think this is going to happen for the WWE. Now, UFC are going to have to put their hand in their pocket, and some of the pay-per-views, they're going to have to pay out a large amount of this 17 million, because Conor McGregor isn't fighting for less than 3 million. So some of the pay-per-views, they're going to end up making a $12 to $13 million profit. And some of the pay-per-views, they're going to make a $5-6 million profit, because you can have fighters on the card that are going to negotiate hard for a bigger payout, but also not too big because there's nowhere else to go. UFC, despite the fact we have a Bellator, UFC is very much a monopoly on MMA, much like WWE is a monopoly on wrestling. I don't think a lot of guys are going to walk out to AEW. I don't think you're going to see Orton or a McIntyre walk out, because WWE are making $7 million for a streaming pay-per-view, and these guys are only getting $100,000. Wrestlers are notoriously poor at fighting their own corners. They don't stick up for themselves. They eat shit and like the taste of it, more or less, and you know that because you've been there. And they will be happy with earning $100,000 or so extra for main eventing a show, when they know that the company are making anywhere between $5 and $7 million, whatever the negotiation is. ESPN are interested. Other places are interested. This is definitely going to happen as soon as this COVID era passes and fans are back in the arenas. This company will be going to a streaming service. I very much doubt that WrestleMania 37 is going to be on the WWE network. And moving forward with that, an additional piece of news we can discuss at a later date, WrestleMania 38 will not be a one-night show, because the two-night show was not just too big for one night, a coincidence. It was too big for one night, an experiment that they've wanted to try for a long time, and it fell in their lap. And the future of WrestleMania is 2 nights on pay-per-view.
Billy, do you have any idea, bro, what they're earning from the network? Do you know what the network is currently bringing in dollars and cents wise?
I think that it's bringing in approximately around $20 million a month. And
okay. Because, bro, they're gonna lose a shitload of subscribers when they pull the pay-per-views off of the network. No.
I think that the when they weigh this up, I don't think that they will, because I think that they will remain for the pay-per-views that they leave on there. I don't think the NXT pay-per-views are going to move. I don't think that the pay-per-view, for example, that we're having this weekend is going to move. I don't know that for a definite because the company don't know that. Once they know what they're doing, I'll find out what they're doing. But at this point in time, I'm going to be safe because I don't want to be Dave and give people the wrong information. And I will tell you that WrestleMania next year will not be on the network, and I don't think Royal Rumble either. And I'm willing to commit to those two. But I think they now know, with how bad Raw's been, and trust me, I've suffered and you've suffered and everybody's suffered through it. And I don't know who can possibly be liking these shows at this moment in time. But I think they're comfortable now with where their core audience is, to the point where this network number will not disintegrate too much. I think they have a number in mind, be it just slightly below that $1.5 million mark, where they don't expect the network to drop to. Plus, in addition to that, they're also in talks with people, stuff that might not interest us, but they're in talks with people like Evolve and people like that in order to purchase extra content. Plus, you know, we have things like this really good Undertaker documentary that we have part 4 this weekend. I know you haven't watched it, but I tell you, as a friend, if you're suffering through the product, make yourself suffer through this documentary, because it will be something that you can actually enjoy that's wrestling related, that may be enjoyable for you to talk about, because you're watching the stuff that they don't do well, but you should be watching the things that they do well. Again, this documentary definitely is the best thing that they've done in 2020, along with the Drew one as well that they did, the biography that they did on Drew. There's some good stuff on the network. So I do think that they believe, and I agree with them, that they will be able to hold a number just around about 1.5.
Billy, give us a little tease of what you and I are going to discuss on Chicken X. We're going to go record that next. That is on russosbrand.com. Give us a little tease what we're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about more business stuff. We're going to talk about the future of them opening up, and when we can see fans going in and how that may occur, and what the holdup is, which nobody else has spoken about, I don't believe. We're going to speak about some people that have signed new deals despite the fact that they've released people. We're going to speak about AEW for once, because I got a load of tweets. My Twitter went off, and you were tagged in it as well, unfortunately for you, on Friday, when I dared criticize Cody Rhodes, and I said he was one-dimensional and a copy of just a whole bunch of guys. And my point was, I don't get it. Someone explained to me how this guy is so great, because I don't see it. And then a load of people explained to me how he was, and a majority of people explained to me how he wasn't. But we'll talk about the whole AEW dynamic generally, because I'm not a fan of what they're doing, and I know that's almost like opening a box that opens me up to a lot of shit and criticism, but we're going to do it as a one-off on this show. And before we go, over on the brand, and speaking of Dave Meltzer and how and you actually gave me the segue, and I didn't take it, but we'll do it now. He did a story a few weeks ago about how the plan changed from Shayna Baszler to Asuka once they found out Becky Lynch was pregnant. My story is that Asuka was always winning the Money in the Bank because Vince had fallen in love with her and planned to move her over to the other brand. But he turned around and said the plans changed from Shayna to Asuka, at which point the question that I asked is, why did they not hang the championship belt up? Because he's insinuating that the entire plan was for them to always put the belt in the briefcase to unveil it. Bro, the belt doesn't fit in the briefcase. My story is that they were fishing around on the day, and they had to repaint a smaller belt. They had to spray it. They had to redesign a belt a couple of days before, in time to do this. So in the last few weeks, they came up with the idea, after they found out Becky was pregnant, to put the belt in a briefcase. That was a redesigned belt with softer leather. Then the softer leather is what you find in the commemorative belts. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, because there's nothing better than actually showing you why Dave Meltzer's wrong rather than telling you why. So here we have an actual replica belt made of the proper leather. This is not commemorative or anything. And here we have an actual Money in the Bank briefcase. Now I'll try and make this fit into my camera. Let's open this up. Right, here we go. So here we go. We got it open.
Okay, we see it. Yep.
These belts, no matter how many ways I fold it, the leather is too good.
You can't fold that leather, bro. You can't fold the leather. You would damage the belt.
You cannot physically get this in. It will not, and it's not even missing by whatever way I do it. I've tried this throughout the entire time.
Hold on, Billy, I got to give you applause for that. Billy, hold on. I got to go to my soundboard here, Billy. Hold on. Very nice. Very nice, Billy.
So I know somebody's going to turn around and say that the universal belt is different to the women's belt. It is, but it's different by 4.1 inches on the strap, not on the head size. The head sides are both 10.5 because WWE wouldn't bother investing in different plates because all the plates, the WWE logos are the same. So I understand that it's 4 inches, but this is not missing by 4 inches.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, bro. All right, Billy, tell everybody, bro, where they could follow you. Tell everybody about the other sites that you have online. Go ahead, bro. Give them the skinny.
Yeah, so you can catch me over at thedirtysheets.com, which is my website. It has been transformed into a Patreon page, but there is a lot of content that's not behind the paywall. But if you're a wrestling fan, you won't mind paying the $5. If you want to win money, then upgrade to the $40 package. I emailed Vince immediately after the pay-per-view this week, and he'll be able to verify it. We had Io Shirai winning the Money in the Bank. Beating Charlotte. Got Money in the Bank on the brain now. We had Io Shirai as the biggest underdog in the match. She was 5-1. My clients were given the bet on Saturday, and she ended up winning. We got the information that she was winning on Saturday, and but even before it happened, I sent it over to Vince and was like, "This is what ended up happening." So if you want to get in on a piece of that, then there's the time to get involved. And also, my colleague Cab told me to mention that the Dirty Sheets is also a podcast. I always thought that was a given, but apparently it's not obvious. We're not just a website; we're a podcast. We're a podcast first. We do a weekly review of Raw, but Raw's pretty bad, so we do like an hour and a half show, an hour to an hour and a half. And it's funny, Vince, because I'm promoting this show by advertising that we do as little about Raw and SmackDown as possible.
That's sad, man.
So we will talk about booking ideas, where they can go. We'll generally talk about old wrestling and things of that nature. We will fill the hour to hour and a half with as little of Raw and SmackDown as we possibly can. And if we do, we give alternative ideas. And that's the difference between us, our podcast, and when you listen to the likes of Meltzer, Alvarez, all these other guys. Everybody's a critic, but I assure you, Meltzer, if you gave him the pen and pencil, he couldn't improve Raw. At least I'm sitting here talking to a guy that wrote wrestling for 5 or 6 years and did it successfully and actually moved the needle. Meltzer sits there and criticizes people, and I've never, ever, ever heard him book an alternative idea. I'm not Vince Russo, but I do a podcast with my ideas, and I think that sometimes they're pretty decent because that's what the listeners end up telling us. Yeah. So I think it's always good if you're going to bash something, at least come up with an alternative, and we'll always have alternative ideas or booking plans or discuss fantasy booking and whatnot, hypothetical stuff moving forward. And I think if you're not going to do that, then shut your mouth and don't criticize.
All right, there you go. Exactly, Billy. Guys, follow Billy. And also, guys, go listen to A bucket full of chicken next, bro. We've got more news. We're going to have AEW talk, bro. We're going to find out what's going on. We're finally getting people in arenas. Just go over to russosbrand.com. Bro, for Vince Russo and Billy Batti, we will see you over on Russo's Brand.